So, you guys can hear me, right? I don't understand a word of Spanish, but so I hope you understand me and the translator can help you. But anyway, I'm here to talk about dev tools for the progressive web. A brief introduction. I'm Kenneth. I'm originally from Denmark, but I live in Canada, so it's quite a journey to get here, but I'm really excited to be here in Colombia. And as Pablo said, I work for this little company called Microsoft. And basically what I do at Microsoft is all about developer tools. So I'm a program manager, and my team are shipping the tools inside our new browser, Edge. We're also shipping the tools inside VS Code, our new cross-platform editor. We're doing stuff on Azure, our cloud, and we're also doing stuff for our big IDE, Visual Studio. So we do a lot of different things with dev tools. And personally, I think like dev tools are really exciting because I provide the tools so you can build great things for all of the end users out there. So it's kind of a meta-level thing to do, and like dev tools are really interesting. So, but instead of just talking about dev tools, I want to provide a bit of context first. Because if you look at the overall web platform, it has actually changed quite a bit. Like, I remember when I started using the web, it was all about documents. And like the way, like, we're still using HTML, that is a markup language to describe text documents, scientific reports. But the reality is that most of us are using the web and the browsers today as an application runtime. Half of America after 6 p.m. is watching Netflix in their browser on their cell phone. So we're using the web platform in a dramatically different way. And if you also look at some of the devices we're using each and every day, they've changed quite a bit too. Like if all of you like remember the good old like workstation Mac, like the black like Lenovo laptop, these devices has changed because if you look at like how people access the web today, is mainly about mobile devices. It could be an iPad, an Android tablet, it could be a Chromebook, it could be a Surface from Microsoft. It's like the range of devices people use to access the web are significantly different than what it was 10 years ago. And this has an impact in terms of the browsers that are out there. Like at some point in time, IE was a thing. It was like had a massive use, right? But today, the reality is that Chrome is the dominating browser, followed by Firefox. And then we're actually seeing Safari on iOS having a significant reach in terms of the iPad segment. That's like overall 5% of the desktop segment sitting and browsing the web from an iPad. So we've seen a lot of change in terms of like how the market share has moved. And also from, like, I work at Microsoft, like, the way we go about the web is like, IE is dead. Like, we don't care that much about IE anymore. Of course, there's still some legacy installations out there, but we're building for the web in a new way. Like, if you look at like how we approach building a browser with Edge, is basically we're doing it in a Mozilla kind of way. We have an open bug tracker. We have an open dashboard in terms of what features we're releasing. Our JavaScript engine, Chakra, is open source. It runs on Macs. It runs on Unix. So we're basically like investing in the web in a quite different way, and I'm happy about that. But another interesting thing to set the context of how we see dev tools for the future is basically internet adoption has also changed quite a bit too. So every time I see like this graph here of like there's more people living inside the circle than outside of it, it's a good reminder. I'm kind of stunned every time I see it, but it's a good reminder when I'm sitting in Canada and mainly thinking about like the American market, that the majority of the people going online for the first time and using the web are mainly coming from emerging markets like Asia or new continents like South America. And we tend to forget about that. And if you look at just mobile internet users, like right now, there's almost like 500 million people online in China just from the mobile phone. There's more people online in China than there's population in Europe, or there's population in the US. And we all talk about the US market as being a massive opportunity. What about China? And I just want to emphasize this point from Benedict Evans, like saying mobile internet is the same as saying color TV. Like you don't say, I have a color TV at home. You say, I have a TV, or maybe you don't even have a TV. It's kind of implied that the way we go online today is from a mobile device. There's no such thing as the mobile internet. It is the internet. And it's going to be the internet for the next billion going online. And this is actually quite interesting because if you look at that landscape and the devices of people going online for the first time, then the mobile browsers has changed quite a bit. We are seeing the dominating browser being Chrome on Android. We're seeing the the second most popular browser is Safari on iOS. But we're also seeing like new browsers like UC in the Asian markets that almost has like 15% of the market. So we are almost seeing parity with Safari Mobile, with UC browser, but not a lot of developers are testing in UC. And then we are seeing like new browsers, for example, Samsung Internet, that's the purple one out there, with almost 7%. That browser is growing significantly because it's now the new default browser on all Samsung browsers. And yet we developers don't test in them. That's interesting. And also the engines that we're using each and every day, we need to target as developers, has changed too. Like Blink is still the dominating engine. We have HTML at Microsoft, that's Gecko around. There's WebKit that Apple's kind of left with. And then we have like U3 engine, that's basically UC's browser. There's an old fork of WebKit that nobody knows how it works, but it has like 14% of the market. It's quite a significant chunk. And then we also have new browsers coming around like Brave, that is using whatever engine that is available on the platform. So if you use Brave on your desktop, it's an Electron app, so that's Chromium. If you use it on your iPhone, it's WebKit. If you use it on Android, it can be Chromium, it can be something else, depending on what's available. So we're seeing this new wave of browsers with Brave coming along that's just use whatever engine. The engine, you could say, is commoditized. And then we're also seeing some trends like, and my bet here is that in a few years, you won't know that you're using a browser. Because what we are seeing happening already on mobile is that we are seeing the web being embedded inside native. So what we have here to the left is basically Chrome custom tabs and the Pinterest app on Android. It's a native app, but as soon as you click a link, they open up a custom tab of Chrome with all the UI stripped away. So it's kind of an integrated experience inside the native app. We're seeing the same on iOS with Safari View controllers, where you can basically embed Safari in a more intelligent way inside your native shell. And on the desktop, we're also seeing the web being used as a runtime. So some of you are probably using Slack, that's an Electron app. Our new editor we're shipping cross-platform is just a web application shipped inside an Electron shell. It's just a runtime. And then there's this whole next wave of the progressive web. And I just want to touch upon this because basically what the period of the web we're going through now is that now the web apps are going to gain the capability of being able to escape the browser Chrome. So you go to a website, your user clicks on a URL, and that website can suddenly be promoted to an app, a shortcut on your home screen. So this basically what's happening here is that the browser Chrome as we know it, all the UI, the address bar, the bookmarks bar, all that stuff is going to go away. And if the majority of the people are just clicking a link, like right now they go to an app store, if the future they just click a link and they have the app open, then they will never experience what we think traditionally is a browser. They'll just see an app. And just to provide the Microsoft perspective here, we are going all in on PVAs and the progressive web. So that means as of this moment, we have Service Worker, we have Fetch, we have Cache, we have Push, we have Web Manifest. All these things are in development right now. And we are going to make it happen so we can, so to say, surface progressive web apps and websites through all the Microsoft properties we have. So we have a Windows store, we have a lot of different things, and how we're trying to fit the web better into this native app ecosystem. So we're seeing all of the major browser vendors, including us, going all in on PVAs, and that's wonderful. But what we're also seeing in terms of perspective here is WebAssembly. WebAssembly is coming along. And I just want to provide the perspective here because WebAssembly is going to enable a whole new range of developers building for the web, but not using traditional web technologies. So in the future, people will be able to take their C++ code, there might be a game, compile it with Clang, compile it maybe with mscripten that generates Wasm code that runs inside the browser, that is being run by our JavaScript engine, and then maybe rendering is via WebGL. So that means you can take your traditional C++ 3D game engine and run it inside the browser, and you haven't touched a line of HTML and CSS. This is where the web is heading in terms of just being an application runtime that can run programs. And what we're seeing here is basically the front-end role is being redefined as we meld the web and native together. And a really good example of this is basically like the Android watch I have on my wrist. That thing can show notifications. But the interesting thing is like now that all the different browsers are gaining VIP notification capabilities, one of the questions I'm asking myself, like, are you a front-end developer if you write JavaScript in a service worker that shows a push notification, but it's rendered on my wrist, on my watch? I haven't written any single line of UI. I haven't written any line of CSS or HTML. Am I still then a VIP developer or front-end developer? I don't have that answer. But we're seeing a lot of change in terms of like our assumptions, like I build stuff for the web, I can do CSS. You might not need that in the future. So my job at Microsoft is to make sense of all of this and see, okay, what should we do in terms of div tools? So how does div tools fit into all of this? And basically, the way I see it is like today's div tools are quite alike. Like if you open up Chrome div tools, Edge div tools, Firefox div tools, Safari Web Inspector, they kind of look the same. You have a DOM inspector, you have a console. There's no much change other than maybe you have a feature set that you prefer in one of them, but they're very alike. And my statement here is that I think our industry has a div tools dogma in terms of the web has been around for 20 plus years now, and we've kind of grown into the assumption that what is a div tool? A div tool has to be something that you open up in the bottom percent of the screen, and it has to have a console, a profile, and a DOM explorer, and then it's a div tool. And in the perspective of the progressive web and all this change we're seeing, especially in the perspective of WebAssembly, I'm asking myself, is this really the best we can do? Because if I look at like what my team did back in 2007, that was the IE developer toolbar. That was like the first time you could peek into the rendered DOM and see computer styles. And then I fast forward to what my team is doing today, and basically what we're doing is kind of the same. There hasn't been really a lot of change. Like, yes, we have added a lot of new tools to the tool instead of just a DOM explorer, but they're kind of the same. And if I look at like what Chrome is doing, the tools are kind of conceptually the same. There's really no difference. It's mainly a UI thing. And the question I'm asking myself, is this really the best we can do? Because if I look at the div tools we provide today, it's basically a collection of tools. It's a mini IDE that has a profiler component, the emulation tool. There's a lot of different things in there. And quite frankly, we're running out of UI space. Like I can only add like 3 more tabs, and then we don't have any more space, right? And Google and Mozilla are basically facing the same challenges. Like the div tools are becoming really, really complicated. And like, why is it an assumption that the div tools has to be something you dock at the bottom of your screen, something you can open that takes space away from your viewport? Many developers, we have multiple monitors. Maybe we're sitting on different kind of devices. Why is this something this is a div tool? And when I look at like how we're using the different div tools, it's all about the debugging context. So I write my app over here, then I go into my debugging context, open the div tool, then I debug things, and then I switch to my authoring context. So we have the debugging context with the div tool, then have my authoring context in my editor. And what we as web developers tend to do all day long is this. Basically just tapping between authoring, debugging, authoring, debugging. It's just like built in like how we approach our tools, because that's just the way you build, right? And basically the way I see it here is that our workflow is completely broken, because the very tools we use to author is not the same as we use to debug. If you ask like an iOS developer or an Android developer to switch between different tools for this and do this all day long, they would think you were insane. But we think it's completely reasonable. And you could argue that it is, but I think we can do better. Because if I look like a typical debugging workflow, it still is like I open my editor, I open my browser, I navigate to the page, I go back to my editor, I find the file I need to have open, I make a change, I go back to my browser, I refresh it, I open up my div tool, I go to the scripts tab, I find the same file I have open inside my editor, I go to that line and just edit it, then I set my breakpoint, then I debug it, and then, now I finally realize what was wrong, so I remember the value inside my head. Then I go back to the editor, make the change, save, tap back to my browser, and then I repeat this all day. This is the workflow for many developers. And we as a community, we've been inventing a lot of different tools, like hot module reloading with WebSocket connections from the browser, and a lot of things you can run to try to mitigate this. But conceptually, the workflow is still the same. And I call this like the web developer Stockholm syndrome. Because Because when I'm talking to web developers, they say, yes, it's normal. Like, I tab between all these 5 different tools. Like, yeah, that's how you build for the web. It's easy. And like, the first time somebody is learning to build for the web, it's like, what the hell is going on here? So yeah, this is quite interesting. And like, some of the few thoughts I'm asking myself is like, why is it given that I have to learn a new dev tool for each browser? If I prefer Edge dev tools, why can't I use that with Firefox? Or if I prefer Chrome dev tools, why can't I use that with Edge? Why do I have to use different tools between authoring and debugging? Why is that given? Why is that something we cannot change? It's like, why isn't my editor more integrated with my browsers? The reality is I need to target a lot of different browsers every day. It's like, why are div tools still bundled with our browsers and being docked at the bottom % of the screen? I don't know, but that's some of the things I'm trying to figure out because that's my job, right? And now I'm trying to, yeah. So basically, if you look at like the disconnect we have between authoring and debugging, it's like some of the things we've been recently been experimenting with Microsoft, like what can we do to like break down this wall? Because basically, how I go about it is like I see the editor and the in-browser dev tools we have each and every day. I don't see them; they should be replacing each other, but they should complement each other because there's value in having a contextual tool inside the browser, and there's a value in having a great browser. So we've been thinking about how can we connect these two worlds? Like how can we make the experience a bit better? So what if the workflow was more like this? That I open my editor, I find the file I want to edit, I make my change, I open up the browser, I set the breakpoint if I want to script debug inside my editor. I debug it from my editor, I make a change, the browser's updating, and I can repeat this all day long. So we basically removed a lot of different steps from this. So back in February, we released the first version of what we call our VS Code Chrome debugger. And basically what's going on here is that I have an Angular app open over in Chrome that is using Browserify, so the whole application is bundled up. And what I then can do is that I can actually take VS Code and just say connect to Chrome. And then we connect to Chrome, we do reverse source mapping. That means we take what's loaded inside Chrome and map that to your local file system. And you can just set a breakpoint in the very line that you want directly from your editor. Instead of tapping back to the div tool, open up the div tools, we have this fully integrated experience where you have a stack trace, you can step back in time, just like you can do in a regular div tool, but you don't need to leave your editor. It's all integrated. And we're doing this on top of like Chrome's remote debugging protocol because it's an open protocol. And what we found with this experiment we shipped in February is that people actually love this experience. This is the most popular debugger for VS Code we have out there. And the numbers are growing like in significant rates because since it's a simpler workflow. So another thing we did after this was like, if people like this kind of integrated experience, what can we do for our own browser Edge? So we released a little app you can start called Edge Diagnostics Adapter. I know it's a kind of a cryptic term, but basically what it enables developers to do is that they can use Sublime Text or VS Code and use that to debug Edge. Because if we can do it for Chrome, hell yeah, we can do it for our own browser too, right? And basically the way it works is like our Edge Diagnostics Adapter is exposing the Chrome debugging protocol. So any tool that connects, that can connect to Chrome can now connect to Edge. So that means you can actually take Chrome dev tools with a basic feature set and use it with Edge if you want to. Because we don't want to force you to use Edge dev tools if you don't like our tools. Then you should be able to pick the tools you need to use yourself. This also means that tools like VS Code, VS, there's JetBrains products like WebStorm, they support Chrome debugging. With this Edge Diagnostics Adapter, they also, out of the box, supports Edge. So this is just some of the things we're doing to try to make it simpler to build for Edge. And I just want to emphasize the point here that we do support an open ecosystem where browsers and tooling vendors are able to like work together. We don't want to force you into like use a Microsoft tool because it's the only thing in the world. Like no, you should choose our stuff because you think it's a better product. We don't want to force you into a specific thing. And that's basically how we want to foster an open ecosystem around our browser. So another interesting aspect of this, because hey, we are JSConf, is that basically Node.js has also embraced the Chrome debugging protocol. Google contributed this, and this is quite a significant contribution because this basically enables any tool that understands the Chrome debugging protocol to connect to Node. And in our case, we have a Chrome debugger that can connect to Chrome and Edge, and now can also connect to Node, because it's the same APIs that are available. And this opens up some really interesting scenarios in the future, like all of us in the field are experimenting with this, where we can do something we call cross-tier debugging. So if you have a full-stack web application that runs Node on the server, and you have a bit of JavaScript in the client, you can just set breakpoints in both part of your code base and debug it from the same tool. That could be VS Code, it could be whatever diff tool you prefer. But you don't need to use a different tool because it's JavaScript running, and you should be able to set a breakpoint if you need to. So I think this is really exciting for the future. Another thing that we shipped recently is basically what we call the VS Code iOS debugger. And that's in the world of, hey, the world is mobile, so you can actually have the same experience as we have for desktop Chrome, but for iOS. And one interesting point about this is that this is actually the first time you can debug Safari on iOS from a Windows machine. I know there's still quite a few Windows users out there, and what they had to do before was actually go out and buy a Mac and have a Mac Mini sitting in the office just to test iOS. We have solved that, because there's absolutely no point that you should leave your development machine just to have a testing machine over there. So that's some of the things we're doing, and the whole point of this is that we're just building on top of all the investments we already have. So we have VS Code, we have our Chrome debugger. That speaks the Chrome debugging protocol. And hey, there's a protocol adapter for iOS. So that means we could actually plug in our existing infrastructure just to debug iOS. You could imagine this be happening for other browsers in the future. Or you could imagine Chrome diff tools work with other browsers in the future. This is really exciting because it gives you as a developer the ability to choose the tools you prefer. So a question I've been asking myself here is like, why is the web one of the few platforms that still bundles a full development environment inside the runtime? It's not like that you can open up your iPhone and then do a magic swipe and suddenly Xcode starts, or that you open up your Android app and then Android Studio starts. But in the browser, you can open up your diff tool. At least on the desktop. On the mobile, we haven't enabled the diff tool yet. So I'm just asking, like, why is that still an assumption we think is the right one? Because if I look at like normal web users, they're really confused. This is an example from Firefox, where there's like, I don't know if it's a girl or a guy, but really confused user like that opened up diff tools by mistake, and it's like somebody like suddenly like is talking about like cyber police and like child abuse. It's like, what's going on? And what's going on is basically because of this error message down here, like forcing all of his children to be wrapped in a block. And like inline span child, that's like, whoa, what's going on here, right? And like, if you're a developer, you understand this, but if you're a regular user, you have no clue what's going on. I would be confused too, right? And we're seeing the same. This is Chrome. If you go to Facebook, then Facebook's injecting this big-ass message saying, stop, this is a browser feature intended for developers. Stop hacking yourself. You shouldn't copy, paste anything in here, and here's us information. And like, the way I look at this is like, we as platform vendors has basically failed. Damn it. Let's see. Will it work? Yay, okay. And now it needs to update, interesting. Okay, not now. So basically, we as platform vendors, we have failed. Like, if Facebook or Google is forced to inject this message into the console, then we have failed as platform vendors. And we're seeing the same for like Edge. This is just a screenshot from one of the many bugs we have in our bug tracker, where like a user's like, inspect elements, what's that about? Like, I'm on Facebook playing this game, and like suddenly there's this inspect element when I want to copy paste a value. And like we actually had to reply to the user down here, say, this is a feature intended for developers, you as end users shouldn't care about it. But that's really a bad user experience if you actually think about it, when most of the people using the web is not developers. So actually in our newest release of Edge, we have made the product decision to hide Edge diff tools by default. So that means if you use Edge, because most of our users are just regular users that is not using Edge for development. So why is it we insist that enforcing inspect element and view source? It doesn't make any sense if you're just a regular guy. So that's disabled by default. And you actually have to go into about flags, that is our like settings page, to enable them. And you have to tick this box to say view source and inspect element in the context menu. I would say though, we have still kept like the keyboard shortcuts in. So that means if you are in Edge and you press F12, we will enable the dev tools, and we will show a little warning that says, you have now enabled dev tools, click here to revert, because we consider if you know a specific keyboard shortcut to enable the dev tools, you're probably a developer. But we might revise that in the future. But I think this is basically where we're headed, where the browser Chrome is going away. The browser is just going to be an application runtime that most end users are just using. Why do we then have all these weird, like, developer advanced features in there? Like, maybe we should just hide them, and then if you're a developer, you click a button, and then you get the developer mode. Safari has been doing this for years. And I just want to emphasize this, why are dev tools still bundled with our browsers? If the future is the progressive web where the browser Chrome is going away on your phone, your web app site is just running in an Electron shell, and the devices that you're using is basically a HoloLens. It could be the new Oculus Facebook is doing with their browser. It's mobile devices, it's not a desktop. Why do we then insist on shipping the tools you need to debug the web with inside a desktop browser at the bottom percent of the screen? Like, the reality is that you might need to target browsers that only runs on a HoloLens, because it's a web VR world. And do I, as like a platform, do I need to force you to install Edge on desktop or Chrome on desktop to get access to the developer tools? I don't think that's relevant anymore, and I think we need to change the space assumption. And if I look ahead in terms of dev tools for the progressive web, it's like I imagine a future where dev tools are something you can use to connect to any browser you need to be able to connect to. Your editor can talk to the browser. And also, I'm imagining new kind of editors. When WebAssembly is going to be a thing, then you can easily imagine like game studios like Unity 3D. You can just debug the WebAssembly code running inside the browser. And that browser is no longer just WebKit or Edge HTML, but this whole range of browsers that you as developers need to debug and care about. And these browsers are running on a much broader range of devices than what we have today. And we could easily imagine that now you can just take your iPhone and plug it in over the USB cable to debug it, or you can just use a desktop browser. But you could easily imagine a future if you're sitting here in Colombia and you need to deploy something for the American market, and you just wanted to get access to like the 5 most used devices in Canada, then why do you have to go out and buy those devices? Why can't you just access them from a device cloud? There's absolutely no reason for why you have to go and buy the physical device if you can just stream it over the internet. So this is a reality that I envision and we envision as Microsoft, is basically that we can take the editors we provide, we can take the dev tools we provide, and connect them with a broader set of runtimes on a broader set of devices. And it's just like a personal belief here. I think as the web grows out of the browser Chrome is going away, then like we as an industry need to spend a lot of time trying to reimagine what the dev tools should be. Because continuing to ship them inside a desktop browser, I don't think that makes so much sense anymore. So thank you so much for listening to me. And if you're interested in following along, like what we're doing at Microsoft, then please follow me on Twitter, but also follow Edge DevTools, which is our relatively new DevTools account. So thank you so much.
Oh.